Martin, David and I had a really jolly time looking at the various artefacts around the church. I asked if the window on the right was the Good Samaritan, and even people who know a lot need to really look to see.
The one on the right hand side being the Good Samaritan.
On the left hand side as we look at it. Oh, but no, perhaps the right.
I think it is, because you've got the parable of the sower to the left.
So it's probably parables then, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's based on parables. Because actually we had a member of our congregation, James, who was a stained glass worker. And I mean, basically he said, it's not the best because it's a lot of Christmas stocking filler.
Yes.
Apart from the sort of panes depicting the parables. But the east window,
I think, is much unsung.
Yeah. And it's the second time, it's not the original east window, because the first one was by Bishop Hamo de Heth. We have a stone on the other side of that wall, which actually shows how it was designed.
Hamo de Heth is the date for that. He was a very long-serving 14th century Bishop of Rochester.
You're saying the stained glass itself is Victorian?
Yes, but the window and the tracery pattern is the original.
And then this one, the glass again is Victorian?
Yes, it's Heaton, Butler and Bain, which is a famous Victorian stained glass maker in Covent Garden. I think there was a fancy restaurant there now. I think that's probably gone bust since, but they're a very interesting group, and it's soon after they got together, the last one of the partnership joined the firm, and it's in their early days, and I think at their most vibrant and their best. Their style changed quite considerably over sort of 30 years into the last years of the 19th century. It's very vivid, and their aim was to go back to medieval stained glass and colours. And so they went away and looked at that. And you get a wonderful example of that window over there, which I think we might just quickly go and look at as I'm in full flow on it. It's a Victorianised, Protestantised version of the 7 Works of Mercy. One of the Works of Mercy was burying the dead, but I think that was a bit too Catholic for 19th century England. So if you look at some of the details here, especially in this window, you can see the very stylised trees in the background there, 3 of them. And they're straight out of Canterbury Cathedral windows. The style is 13th century. And then in typical medieval fashion, you've got this wonderful pinnacle above, pinnacles and a canopy, straight out of almost a 19th century Gothic architecture textbook.
So what are the 7, the 6?
Well, it tells you underneath.
Oh, okay.
So it comes from a famous question, which Jesus asked of his disciples. When do we ever do anything for you, God? And Jesus says, well, whenever you visit anybody who's thirsty and give them a drink, then you did it to me. If you met somebody that was naked and you clothed them, if I was in prison and you visited me, if I was hungry and you fed me, if you welcomed me as a stranger into your home and put me up for the night, then you did it for me. And then the last one, if I was sick and you visited me, then you did it for me.
And look how stylised that is. That's not really a Victorian sickbed, is it? It's making the point, but it's also through this sort of prism of looking back and sort of medieval views. So you said pre-Raphaelite, so before Raphael. And it's that style. But again, those figures I think are quite remarkable. There's some even better ones there. So this is the main east window. The vicar at the time, Blomfield, Richard Blomfield, I think, was it? He was, I think his uncle, or certainly a relative, was Sir Arthur Blomfield, the architect. And I think through those connections, he got into these restorers and stained glass makers. But I think, again, this is equally wonderful. And if we're talking pre-Raphaelite, the bottom level, the first panel with an image in it, is the Annunciation. Look at that pot of lilies, which is straight out of anything. A well-known feature compared with of the Annunciation, but it's very much sort of greenery, gallery, Grosvenor Gallery, pre-Raphaelite kind of stuff. But I mean, look at the beards they have and the care that's gone into depicting these faces. No, it's the Beatitudes. That's what it is. It's the Beatitudes.
It's a famous Sermon on the Mount. Jesus went up on a hill, and in certain of the Gospels, they condensed Jesus' teaching to say, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be blessed. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness."
So what is it about that one that's making you...
If you look underneath the main panels with figures as opposed to heads, there's an inscription, and they are from the Beatitudes. So it says on the left there, "Blessed are the pure in heart," which they've taken the Annunciation story, Mary, as a way of displaying that. The meek, the kings, are giving their gifts to the Christ.
kings are the meek in this scenario. Okay.
Yeah, because they're homaging. They're paying homage to the
Magi.
newborn Christ.
And then the bottom on the right, it's "Blessed are they that mourn." So I think it is a sort of, it's an angel, which is, because the angel's got wings there, has brought, I think, probably the two Marys to the tomb, because Mary Magdalene has got very long hair. That's part of the iconography of Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Blessed are the
Poor in spirit.
poor in spirit.
I think that's probably disciples. But again, very earnest Victorian young men as disciples. But I mean, look at that sleeping soldier. But they went to a lot of trouble to try and get these bright, vivid colours. Because underneath the crucifixion it's got, "It is finished." The point of Christ's death.
There's a lot of animals represented at the top.
No, they're the four evangelists, the symbols of the gospel writers.
Is there an eagle there? Is it one of them?
There is, right at this side.
Yes. Okay.
And I think you've got the lion, which is St. Mark.
And then in the centre, that's the Lamb of God, yes?
Yes, Agnus Dei.
And that represents Christ.
Yes.
When I first became vicar here, we were asked if we could actually have a prayer board, which is somewhere where people can put their prayers or say their prayers or light a candle. And this is for everybody in the whole parish. And you'll notice that people during the week come in and they will pin their prayers on the board and light candles. But there was no sort of focal point. So we asked Aidan Hart to produce one. And he was commissioned to basically work with the various stages of life that we all go through as human beings. So we're born, and so we have a picture of the birth of Jesus' ministry, which took place with the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist. And then as you go through life, you come to an important stage where you start to get married with a significant person in your life. So this is represented with the wedding feast at Canaan, and where you turn water in, where water is turned into wine when the wine gave out. But of course, through life, there's also suffering and pain. You have Jesus' descent into hell, rescuing the first human beings, Adam and Eve. And so we wanted that sort of depicted, the whole aspect of life. But the bit that I got really excited about was also saying I'd like it to be quite sort of modern and connecting with the scientific explanation of creation with the Big Bang. And I also wanted to reference how being inclusive in the Christian tradition, we're also inclusive of other faiths. So I asked Aidan if he could work with the various chakra levels of Hinduism. So in terms of actually the East awakening the chakra levels, you work right from the bottom, literally the anus, which is holding on to things. You know, I'm not going to let go. This is the keep it all together. Yeah. And then you move into a more outward expression through the genital organs, which is desire, which is not, oh, it's not all about me. Oh, there's something out there that's attractive. And then you move into the next chakra level, which is the belly, which is the one of digestion and feeding. So you're drawing in from inside to feed yourself. And then the next level of awakening is the heart. And then you open your heart to others. So it's not just physical. The next chakra level is the throat, in which you begin to articulate your engagement with the outside world on a more conscious level. And at this point, you've got an option. You can either remain engaged with the others on a conscious level, or you ascend further to the middle eye. So you know you have that dot painted. So the third eye is the inner eye of seeing, so that you see more completely and holistically all that is. And then eventually you move to the crown, which is mirrored in Christianity in terms of the halo. And the crown is where you rise to the place of divinity, where you can actually see everything for what it is. And what Aidan also did in iconography is you have the eternal eye of God. So you'll see that that is almost like the human eye. So you have the waves of creation from the Big Bang, the different chakra levels, and at the heart of it all is the eye of God. The different levels are depicted in here as you move through. So I think there are 6 or 7 chakra levels. So that's 1, that's 2, is the 7, yes. Well, the Big Bang is, you know, that when the Big Bang happened, it expanded like the waves and the radiation. So so he incorporated that as well.
Right. Well, I think this is the second of the sort of underrated, and because it was found accidentally in the 1830s. I suppose St. George.
It was whitewashed.
Whitewashed over, yes. So it was lost for centuries. And there it shows St. George and the Dragon. This is fairly standard account of his life that appears in The Golden Legend by Jacob Varenne. And you can see St. George, the dragon, the Virgin he's saving with her pet.
Little lamb?
Looks like a lamb, but it's
Could be a dog.
It's more doggy than that, but I think the iconography is that. And you've got the king and the queen looking down from their balcony over the city. Probably an allusion to the heavenly Jerusalem on the horizon, but it is a wonderful painting, and it's very elaborate, and it dates from probably the late 15th century. That's quite a nice image of an idealised view of the River Dartford.
There's a lovely little touch in that window, because Jeff Porteous used to ride a bicycle.
Yes.
And you can just see, I think, to the right, the outline of a bicycle wheel